Every spring, millions of gardeners hunt for the same thing: a plant that grows fast, yields a massive harvest, and requires zero effort to maintain. A century ago, the U.S. government and early homesteaders were on that same hunt. They scoured the globe and deliberately imported foreign crops that promised these exact miracle traits. This chart maps the historical appeal of these crops against their modern threat level. The plants our great-grandparents prized the most, crops like kudzu, castor bean, and opium poppies, now occupy the highest danger quadrant. The biological traits that made these plants highly desirable a century ago are the exact mechanisms that make them ecological and legal liabilities today. To understand how these agricultural assets became banned substances, we have to look at three specific failure mechanisms. The first is the free utility trap: plants brought in to solve practical problems that became land-consuming invaders. The second category is the aesthetic hazard, where dramatic ornamental landscaping masks hidden chemical toxins. The third is the traditional conflict, where cultural use clashes directly with zero-tolerance federal laws. When a plant is introduced to an environment without its natural checks, its perceived high yield creates a catastrophic biological debt. During the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, millions of acres of topsoil were blowing away. The government paid desperate farmers to plant kudzu, hailing it as a miracle crop to stop erosion and feed livestock. But kudzu grows up to a foot per day. Without natural predators to check its growth, it scales 100-foot pines and pulls down power lines, smothering over 7 million acres across the American South. Japanese knotweed followed a similar path. It was introduced as an attractive ornamental and a reliable spring food source, producing hollow, bamboo-like shoots that have been eaten for centuries in Asia. This explains why knotweed is classified as the world's most invasive plant. A single, innocent-looking shoot hides a root system that burrows 10 feet deep and expands 60 feet horizontally. These roots exert enough pressure to crack concrete foundations and destroy driveways. Planting for easy-to-forage vegetables results in a deeply negative return on investment when state fines and foundation repairs dwarf the initial utility. Water gardeners fell into the same trap with plants like water hyacinth, hydrilla, and giant salvinia, which were prized for water gardens due to their rapid, attractive growth. That growth is powered by aquatic vegetative cloning. Under ideal conditions, these plants multiply rapidly, doubling their total biomass in a matter of days. When these clones escape into public waterways, they form dense, impenetrable mats that entirely lock up the surface of the water. These mats block sunlight, deplete oxygen, and kill fish while simultaneously stalling municipal water intake pipes. Optimizing a private pond for rapid aesthetics transfers the massive cost of mechanical eradication onto the broader local ecosystem. During World War II, the government promoted shrubs like autumn olive and multiflora rose for wildlife cover and high vitamin C yields. But continuous harvest crops rely on birds to spread. Seeds are carried far beyond property lines, igniting uncontrollable thickets that displace native species across entire states. Other imports, like the medicinal herb garlic mustard and the fast-growing tree of heaven, secure their territory using a biological weapon known as allelopathy. Allelopathy is the process where a plant actively releases chemicals into the soil to inhibit the growth of all surrounding native species. High-yield survival foods are often classified as noxious weeds because their aggressive survival mechanisms poison the soil for everything else. Moving away from agriculture, Victorian gardeners prized plants like castor bean and giant hogweed strictly for their massive tropical flair. When these sprawling estate plants moved into 1950s suburban neighborhoods, the math changed. The deadly ricin hidden inside the colorful castor bean seeds became an unacceptable risk for families. Giant hogweed carries an even more sinister defense mechanism. If its sap brushes against skin and is exposed to sunlight, it causes severe chemical burns and permanent scarring. Planting for aesthetic shock value introduces a disproportionate level of catastrophic medical liability to children and neighbors. Finally, we have plants that are neither invasive nor inherently toxic. For centuries, opium poppies, coca plants, cot, and betel nut have provided traditional medicines and social stimulants. The raw plant material is rarely the issue. The risk comes from the potential for concentrated processing into narcotics. Under federal law, Growing even a single plant for ornamental or heritage purposes is treated as evidence of drug manufacturing intent. A plant's safety profile is irrelevant when its chemical makeup turns a greenhouse into a federal crime scene under zero-tolerance enforcement. Evaluate a plant's risk through this flowchart. The first question: does the plant claim to grow rapidly in poor conditions? If yes, you hit the critical geographical filter. Is it native to your region? If no, you are entering an ecological danger zone. For foragers and homesteaders, never trade ecosystem stability for the promise of rapid crop yields. Criminal fines will instantly negate the value of any harvest. For aesthetic gardeners, thoroughly vet vintage or inherited seeds. Historical beauty cannot excuse modern liability. The most successful gardens are built on stable ecosystems that won't require a bulldozer, a hazmat suit, or a lawyer to manage.